All right, so this is the Israelite School of Universal and Practical Knowledge under Commanding General Yohana. In this school, we have been called to teach the so-called Blacks, so-called Hispanics, and so-called Native American people that we are the lost sheep of the children of Israel. And what we're going to do is play a couple brief videos, couple promotions, let everybody get time to get a drink, get a pen, a pad, whatever you need. A couple minutes, and then we'll get right back into it, and we'll get started with our law class tonight.
Get down here to class, 1232 North King Street, Wilmington, Delaware.
Shalom, Lord in Christ, to my brothers and sisters, man. Y'all need to come down to 1232 North King Street, where the truth resides, man. ISUPK Delaware. We definitely representing doing some big things.
That's 202 North DuPont Boulevard in Smyrna, Delaware.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Come and be a part of this rising thing that we got going on here in Delaware.
I hear everybody claiming that they love the Lord and love God and all that. Well, get in here and show it. You know what I mean? The scriptures say faith without works is dead. So if you ain't doing nothing, your faith is dead. So get up and do something. What you need to do is get your ass up and get in the class. You understand what I'm saying? You ain't doing nothing else. You're sitting home wasting time. Everything is going on around you, and you don't know how to compartmentalize these things. You understand? I'm on my way to class right now, like you should be. You know what I'm saying? Class don't stop for nothing.
One Westboro.
Weapons of our warfare is not carnal. I was born in it. You converted. This is not for you. Weapons of our warfare is not carnal. I was born in it. You converted. This is not for you. Handle lights and teddy bears. I'm trying to leave your block romantic. Flicking off the hip, I lead a scene looking like I'm dancing. Ain't one Westworld. Best believe we not gonna stand big titties on a drum. The stick figure looking outstanding. Rip his top with the hands of the Lord. Call that God tears. Send a spear right to the sky and watch his front tear. I'm that nigga cause I run with them niggas. So let's get that clear. Don't question who say I'm the GOAT. I tell them God did. In order to be the best, you gotta beat the best. To me, that's suicide. Of course, I sound cocky to a glizzy eater. Fuck your pride. Don't need a horoscope to see I'm a star, so fuck your sign. You can believe in anything you want, but as for me and mine, God mode. I am what I am, so let's just keep in mind. Don't wanna be like Yaya Kyrie, they wanna be like I. She said she lost until she found me, and then she found a tribe, and then I make a bout face until she called me out of wine. Weapons of our warfare is not carnal. I was born in it. You converted. This is not for you. Leave an imprint of my legacy with a spot for it. No way you can endure to the end if you not loyal. Weapons of our warfare is not carnal. I was born in it. You converted. This is not for you. Leave an imprint of my legacy with a spot for it. No way you can endure to the end if you not loyal. All time, no questions asked. We come and find you. His problems, my problems, and I'm standing behind you. Stepping with style. I'm standing on shit in my product. I take on the crowd. Tell them all, throw in a towel. Half moon with a silencer, make it sound like a howl. We the shit. We about movements with a growl. Heavy is the head with the crown. When I take it, I'm proud. I get the order, bring my sword back wet with a smile, nigga. I'm an Israelite rapper, nigga. Would never hit his wife, but I'll go at you. I make commitments to a gun if I'm talking about a tantrums. Nigga said he a stand-up dude, that mean we laughing, nigga.
All right, so again, shalom. I'm Officer Quahal with ISUPK. We coming to you out of Smyrna, Delaware. If you're able to tune in. If you can get down to the class, get down to the class. We pretty much have class every single day. We have them on 1232 North King Street, and that's in Wilmington, and also in our location in Delaware. And there's also locations literally all around the country and all around the globe. And, again, in the Israelite School of Universal and Practical Knowledge, we do have a leader. I know a lot of Black leaders have failed us in the past. And consequently, some of those leaders we don't even realize have failed because they've been martyred. For instance, Martin Luther King mentioned, before his death that he felt like he was leading his people into a burning building because of segregation. And as we can see, the world and Black people as a whole have gotten into a worse state. There's not a more marginalized, disrespected, or downgraded people in the entire world. And that includes Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans because those are the original children of Israel in the Bible. As I stated, earlier in my statement, we are here to feed the sheep, or Salakia. What I actually said is we're called to teach Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans that we are the children of Israel. And the Bible likens us to sheep, and Christ gave a commandment. And one of the things that we do in the UPK, which I talk about often, is us doing our program. So before I even get into it, can I get that scripture?
Come. This is the book of John, chapter 21 and verse 15. So when they had dined, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these? He saith unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He said unto him.
So hold on, Salakia, right there. So he's being asked a question by Christ. Do you love me? And he's saying, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And the reply is going to be the way it is to show that you do love your brothers and your sisters and the children of Israel. Continue.
He said unto him, Feed my lambs. He said to him again the second time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? He said unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He said unto him, Feed my sheep.
So feed my sheep. When it's talking about feed my lambs and feed my sheep, that's talking about the actual children of Israel. It's not a lot of things in the Bible are symbolic, or they have a twofold meaning.
Right.
We are like sheep because we need somebody to lead us, whether it be a king, whether it be a commanding general like Commanding General Yohana. We need somebody to lead us. Otherwise, we'll be prey for the likes of snakes, any other type of predator animal you can think of. Will be prey, because if you think about it, everybody on the planet, they know how to stick together outside of Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. We have a lot of people who think they're so-called, they think they're revolutionaries. Exactly. They think they're these people that can, do these things and get the people going and this, that, and the fourth, and they'll talk a good game. But then what happens? We still separated. We still messed up. We still on drugs. We'll mess around and decide, you know what? I'm going to sell drugs because my family needs to eat. But we're losing the fact that what about the other people's family that we're selling drugs to? That breaks them up. So our family's good, but then John around the corner, his family not good, because we done sold his mom crack. His father is selling the crack that we giving him. He's going to jail. His mom's thrown out on crack. The daughter's getting sold in sex work. Right. So you done broke up a whole family by doing these types of things. Continue.
He said unto him, Feed my sheep. He said unto him a third time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved because he said unto him the third time, lovest thou me?
He's like, why is this question continuing to be being asked? This is something that's saddening to him. Like, why are you asking me this question over and over? I do love you. He's saying, feed my sheep. This is very important. And then go ahead and finish the verse out.
And he said unto him, Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee. Jesus said unto him, Feed my sheep.
So we can stop right there. So feed the sheep. And what that looks like, that's not only us giving the Bible, precept upon precept, breaking it down correctly for our brothers and sisters, showing them their transgressions, which are sins, so they can get back to the Most High. That's also where they're messed up, poor, impoverished, that we go and do a clothing drive like we did in New York, where we clothed 1,400 something migrants that had, been displaced from whatever Hispanic countries. When the Haitians were under that bridge and we went out to them in Acuna, Mexico, and helped them out. When anything is happening, like in Philly, when we do a food drive, or we go to New York in the neighborhood of Harlem and we feed 300 people, we're supposed to feed the sheep. We can't just collect money and just buy a jet with it while people are starving in the streets. So we're supposed to feed the sheep. And that's what we've been called to do. That's what we're going to continue to do. And to have that type of spirit on you is a warrior spirit, because there's a way to go to war right now. And the scriptures say, I'm going to summarize. It says there's going to be men that are meant to fish. So right now, that's what we're doing. We fishing. We trying to get brothers to join us, help out our people. But then there's going to be a time to hunt.
Right.
When Christ is back on this earth, and the people who weren't following, the people who were against the Most High, those people are going to be hunted down. Whatever rocks they hiding under, whatever caves they under, the scriptures say that they're going to be hunted out those rocks and won't be able to escape, you know, the Most High, that great and terrible day. So let's go ahead and move on, because tonight's class is the law class, but we're going to be talking about Christmas. So the title of the class is Christmas Against the Law. That's an odd title, right? Has anybody ever heard about Christmas being against the law? Like in like the United States, England?
No, sir. I thought you meant as far as the Bible.
Right. So it means both.
Khan, yes, I've heard. You know, it's against the Bible. But as far as in America or in London or anywhere else on the universe, I've never heard of that. So
okay, no sweat. So at a certain point in time, go ahead, sir. You got it.
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to hear about it if we're raised in a country where, you know, Christmas is big.
Damn right.
So, I mean, the only way you would know the truth or whatever is to come to class, like he said. So, I think you know, when you said London, do they hear the truth in London? That's my question.
Absolutely. So, and Christmas, and when I mentioned London, like England, United States, countries that had banned it, there was a whole bunch of other countries that had banned it initially. But in present day, of course, it's not banned. But right now, we do have brothers that have schools over in England, and we're, you know, spreading the same message that we're spreading over here to them to kind of, you know, try to revive what a black man should be for his family and for his nation, to get them out of what they're doing now. Because right now, nothing else is working for us. Like, yeah, like individuals, we'll see people that have like, you know, great amount of money, like a great amount of money. Like you'll see Kanye, you'll see Jay-Z. But then we go, you familiar with this area, right? Yes, like sir. Dover area?
Yes, sir.
We go to Simon Circle. Brothers don't have that type of money. Brothers don't have that type of brotherhood where something small won't result in somebody getting shot. You go to Manchester, something so small as, you know, a disagreement online, something where somebody's like, you know, for lack of a better term, clout chasing and end up in somebody being shot. That's what we've been reduced to where our egos will result in somebody never seeing their family again and being under the earth. But what we're going to do in here is we're going to bring people out of that, whether that be here, whether that be England, whether that be in Puerto Rico, and then teach them other things. Because that's what I just described was a brotherhood. So if you have a disagreement with something somebody said, the Bible tells you to go to him and him alone. Try to piece it up. If it doesn't work, you go before council. Council decides who's right, almost like a court of law. And then they decide the verdict, who's right in the situation, and whatever happens, happens. But as far as Christmas is concerned, yes, at one point in time, it was banned in certain countries. We'll get into more why it was banned, but I'll touch on a couple quick topics. Number one, Christmas brought in a lot of pagan ideologies from like Greek and Roman customs. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of Saturnalia. So it was a practice and a custom where they worship like winter solstice. They took practices from other gods like Nimrod, and they would have big outlandish orgies. They would have drunkenness in the street. There would be all types of stuff going on, and it would get so out of hand. Countries, including the United States, during the 1700s had to ban it. But in the Bible, Christmas has always been banned because Christmas has been a holiday that was celebrated under a different name even before the birth of Christ. So before there was ever a Christmas tree in my house, your house, before Christ was born, you had, you know, Edomites putting these things up and worshiping a whole different God. So we're going to touch on that today. Let me go ahead and get to it. So if we can go to Job 14:4, because some people might say, well, none of that matters. This is the way that I'm going to worship God, because you know, I can do what I want. I can take this, you know, piece of pork, or I could take this holiday that used to belong to something else, and I could say, no, I'm doing this for the glory of God. But let's get some scriptures and precepts on why you can't do that. So this would be Job 14:4.
It's the book of Job, chapter 14 and verse 4. Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? Not one.
So nobody can actually do that. So nobody can take something that is unclean and make it clean. So for instance, in the Bible, it specifically says pork is unclean. You can't take pork and make it clean. You can wash it as much as you want. You can get every single parasitic worm out of it that you want. You can cook it to the desired temperature to make sure it's not raw. But the Lord, our God, said it is unclean. In Job, he's letting us know that an unclean thing cannot be made clean. Go ahead.
Salakia, where we at?
That will be Job 14:4. So, Salakia, can I get that one more time?
Book of Job, chapter 14 and verse 4. Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? Not one.
So not one can actually do that. So let me see. So let's go to 2 Corinthians 6:17 to get a precept on that. So there's countless examples of what will be unclean to us. A lot of people wouldn't even be able to identify with or understand that we're actually Israelites. So they would say, no, we're Africans, right? That's what we were told. But what country from Africa? Because Africa is not an actual country. It's a continent that's bigger than all of North and South America. So there are so many different tribes, so many different countries within Africa. Which country will we go to? I just saw this joke that this devil was doing where he was like, we're apologizing to black people by taking them back to Africa. You know, we were wrong for stealing you guys in the first place. We're going to take you back to Africa. Where back in Africa would we go to? I'm gonna get that. Let me see. I might have that in the let me see. Do we have that Zondervan Bible Dictionary in here?
I got one.
Okay. If you can get after we read that, if you can get Ham for me, because a lot of people will say, well, what do you mean we're not from Africa? We're not Africans. Of course, the continent of Africa has a slew of other countries that wouldn't be considered actual Africans, because an African, he descends from the line of what's called Ham. We'll get to that in a second. Let's just read 2 Corinthians first.
This is 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 17. Wherefore, come out from among them and be ye separate.
So when it says come out from among them, that's talking about the other nations. So when it says holy, the word holy, if you look it up, it actually means to be separated. So when it says thou art an holy people in the Bible, it's saying thou art a separate people. It's kind of like if you would separate like varsity from JV. Like if you, let's just take a small example like that. You got your JV players, you got your varsity players. Let's say those JV players are never going to be good enough for the varsity team. You're going to separate them during that game, right? You're not going to have those varsity players amongst the JV players playing in the same game because they're not the same caliber. They're separate. So when the Bible says holy, it means separate. We're a different class of people. The Bible says that the Israelites are the greatest people on earth.
Exactly.
So even if one would think that blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are not the children of Israel, just know that the children of Israel are said to be in the Bible as the greatest people on earth, and they are to be separate, which we know that is us. That's talking about us. Salakia, can you read that from the top?
Con. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 17.
Mind you, this is in the New Testament. So some might say that believe in the Bible, but believe that everything was changed when Christ came. They might say, well, no, that's the Old Testament. Nobody has to be separated from each other, this, that, and the fourth. Everybody is loved. All of this is this, that, and the fourth. The Bible says something completely different, even in Revelations. The Bible says that all nations are going to separate themselves according to nation, and that's at the end of time, even until the end of time. But continue.
Wherefore, come out from among them.
So come out from among the heathens, the other nations, people that are not Israelites, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans.
And be ye separate.
Be holy. Continue.
Saith the Lord.
The Lord said this in the New Testament. Read.
And touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you.
So if we don't touch the unclean thing, which is talking about the foods that he told us not to touch, if we don't touch the holidays that have been spoken about in the Bible, which are just rooted in idolatry, paganism, and Satanism, the Lord will accept us. We could tell the opposite of it is he will not accept us. There are verses in the Bible that say that you've said the name, the Lord's name, you've cast out demons in the Lord's name, but he still doesn't know you. because even though you spoke a big game, you didn't actually do what he asked you to do, which was to come out amongst those people, to get away from the unclean things. Continue.
Verse 18, and will be a father unto you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty.
At one point in time, what that's talking about is we were called not the children of God because we had messed up. This is saying if we do what the Most High wants us to do, we will be called the sons and the daughters of the Most High. Let's go ahead, go back to Job 14:4. Because that's in the New Testament. This is the Old Testament. This says you can't make something that's clean or salakia. You can't make something that's unclean clean. Read.
Book of Job, chapter 14 and verse 4. Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean one? Salakia, out of an unclean, not one.
All right, the water for that. So we can't take these holidays like Christmas. So Christmas, yes, the class asked, is Christmas against the law? Here, at one point in time, it's no longer. You can do anything you want in this country, pretty much. Like you can do anything you want, kind of depending on who you are. But
right,
as far as doing what you want against the Most High, you can. Like a man can say he's a woman can say he's a man. He can wear what he wants. And the Bible is different. The Lord has certain rules and regulations on how things should operate. The world speaks against that and says, no, we love God. God loves us. We're going to do what we want to do. I don't know how that operates in a household where there's a father that has rules and you say, no, I love you. I'm doing what I want to do, Dad. That don't work in my household. You feel me? Would that work in yours? No. Exactly. So we have to stop trying to play God for some chump that we can just say we love and do nothing that he wants us to do. Matter of fact, before we move on, can we get that the love of God to illustrate what exactly the love of God is? And that also ties into how we should be treating each other. And that also ties back into, feeding the sheep. When Christ was saying, if you love me, you'll feed my sheep. Because when you love your brothers and sisters, you'll follow the laws, the statutes, and the commandments. When you love God, you'll follow the law, statutes, and commandments. We got proof in the Bible.
This is 1 John chapter 5 and verse 2. By this, we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and keep his commandments.
So when Christ was asking us in the previous verse to feed the sheep, that's doing unto others as you would want done unto you. That's giving correction where it needs to be corrected. Read it again from the top.
By this, we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and keep his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments.
If someone is saying that they love God, but they don't keep the commandments, they're not actually loving God correctly. When I first heard this verse, this made me want to do exactly what I was supposed to do, because I say I love God. Like everybody says that they love God. My favorite boxer, I don't know if y'all familiar with Andre Ward. He might be a little bit before y'all time. But Andre Ward, he calls himself the son of God. I love the way he called himself that. Steph Curry, he points at the sky because he's essentially saying like this is to God. But you can't talk a big game and then not do what you're supposed to do. And we're going to keep going over that because this is a law class. But let me get Jeremiah 10 and 2 so we can start talking about Christmas. Because that's a big one. Christmas is one of the most important holidays in the entire world for Americans.
Mm-hmm.
We spend our entire checks. We go bankrupt for it.
Right.
We'll decide, you know what? Since I can't afford gifts, somebody's got to take this L. I'm crawling up in somebody's house. The comedy, the best comedy movie about that was what was that movie? Friday After Next. When Ricky Smiley, right? He's running up in the windows and he's getting to it. But that even though it's funny, that's something that people really do. That's something that people really do. I'm sure like nobody, we want to be perfect angels, right? But our minds, our hearts can be deceitfully wicked. And there have been certain times where men that would call themselves good, they had that thought in their mind, like, man, I don't got it right now. Somebody's gonna have to give it up. Somebody's gonna have to give it up. But we can't do that, especially for some pagan holiday that's gonna take all our money. Let's read about about Christmas in the Bible and what Christ has to, or Salaki, what the Lord has to say about Christmas.
Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 2. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen.
So we've already been told to be separate, to be holy. This is reiterating that. So learn not the way of the heathen. So don't do their customs. Don't follow their gods. Continue.
And be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them.
So when it says be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, there's a lot of brothers and sisters who follow astrology, where they think that they can tell somebody's sign by simply knowing when they were born. And they can say, you know what, you're this type of person because you have the sign. This is saying don't do that. Salaki, one moment. Go ahead, Wayne.
Just to be, I know, but just to be sure, when you say the heathens, who are we speaking of?
So this would be every other nation. But in this particular verse, the Edomites are the ones who were doing it. So you had, well, I won't just say the Edomites because you had, who was it? Nimrod. Was that the Babylonian Empire with Nimrod? I believe that was the Babylonians as well. I'll give you all a brief history on it and then we'll get back into it. What was going on was there was a mighty person who was Nimrod. Now, he wasn't a child of God, but he was so fierce amongst the world at one point in time where he was unaliving. And we're going to have to say certain terms like unalive, online. I think he was a Babylonian.
He's an African.
He was like a Hamite or something like that. But he was such a strong warrior that it was made mention of him in the Bible. And he destroyed and took the lives of countless people. After he died, he was worshipped as a god. His mother, which was his lover at the same time, ended up burying him under an evergreen tree and pretty much was like, he's living forever because he's buried under the evergreen tree.
Right.
Evergreen tree means life. People started giving gifts under that. The Romans and other people like the Greeks, even the Egyptians had similar holidays like that where they would do that. One of them is called Saturnella,
right?
Where they would do similar things, gift giving, this, that, and the fourth. But then there's a whole slew of other pagan and devil worshiping holidays and traditions that they threw into it. And that's what we practice today. So we can go ahead and read that from the top.
Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 2. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree.
So he's saying the customs of the heathens are false. So Salakia, read that from the top one more time.
For the verse 2, thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain.
So the customs of these heathens, so these other nations that do all this other stuff that don't have real gods, they're false. The word vain means false. Continue.
For one cutteth a tree out of the forest.
So back in the day when we would go to get Christmas trees, we didn't have these plastic Christmas trees that had, you know, all these ornaments rather, but lights on it already. We would just go get them from, you know, a place that had the trees growing, and we would actually have to cut the tree down. The tree was living until we would cut it down. Let's read that part about the tree one more time.
For one cutteth a tree out of the forest.
Right.
The work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold.
So this is way before Christ. They're saying they're taking a tree out of the forest. They're cutting it down. They're decking it with silver and gold. When they say deck the halls with whatever bounds of holly and all this stuff, these are all traditions that they've had for such a long time. Even the wreath. The wreath symbolizes something. I wrote it down from an article I recently read, and I'll read what it is. Ornaments. Those are things that were used they called them like wizard balls or witch balls. And what those were supposed to do was catch spirits. And if you look that up on your phone, you'll see it looks exactly like an ornament. Today we hang it on trees, But these are all things that come from something completely different. I'm with these traditions, I'm not hearing or seeing anything that relates to Christ in any way whatsoever, because Christ has nothing to do with Christmas. They've been doing this before he was alive. This is in what book again?
Jeremiah.
This is in Jeremiah. This is, I don't know how many years before Christ. It could be 1,000 years, because I get kind of mixed up with the ADs and the BCs on how to track the time because of the way they've mapped it out. But they'll have BC, BCE, this, that, and the fourth. Could have been 1,000 years before Christ was even born. They're celebrating a holiday with a tree. And this is another thing that you can look up. The cross, having a cross around your neck or worshiping a cross, was around before Christ as well. The Bible never says for us to wear a cross on our chains and this, that, and the fourth. There's other things that we can actually wear to symbolize, you know, what we believe in as far as the beliefs of God. So like, let me just finish this verse real quick and I got you.
Verse 4, they deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not.
So when you cut that tree out, there's no roots, right? It has to stand up. So we used to have to nail it. So there was a stand, and you would either take wood planks and you would nail it. This is a tradition that's carried over thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years. Because Jeremiah is talking about it now, but even right after the time of Nimrod, they were doing this. And now we're putting this in our house, and people that actually are worshiping Satan have passed this down as if it was something good and transformed it as if we could worship Christ with it, as if that's something that would be good for him, you know, on his birthday. And we'll continue to get into, you know, the things about, you know, Christ and his actual birth. But read.
Verse 5, they are upright as the palm tree, but speak not.
So back in the day, there was even a belief that if you didn't do this with the tree would come alive. Some real goofy, spooky type of stuff. Continue.
Slocky.
No sweat.
They must needs be born.
They need to be carried. That's an old English word for being carried. They need to be lifted up. The tree can't move without you moving it.
Because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil. Neither also is it in them to do good.
So at this point in time, what Jeremiah was telling the people was, don't do this custom. I know that you've heard these things about this. I know that you've learned this from the people around us. We're supposed to be holy. We're supposed to be doing something different. We can't do that. Job 14:4 says, who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean thing? Not one. So that's an unclean thing to do. We already read about the New Testament in 2 Corinthians saying pretty much the same thing. When these priests and prophets from the New Testament and some in the Old are getting their information and they're saying, as it is written, they're getting it from the men before them. They're building up on something. They're not just making it up as they go. This is the inspired word of God. Some men did get it firsthand from God and the angels, but the other men are reading in this book from the Old and some parts of the New Testament, and they're able to reiterate it for the people and say, as it is written. Right. So when Paul was in Corinth and he's speaking to the Corinthians, which are actually the Israelites that were dwelling at that time, he's telling them the same thing pretty much Job was telling them in Job 14:4. Salaki, I'm going to see if I can read a little bit from that article about the wreath and those types of practices, because we don't want to be the type of people to say one thing and do another. Like if we say that we're a friend to somebody, if we say that we're a brother to somebody, we show it.
Exactly.
If something's happening to Ka'ash, it's happening to me. So if it's 100 men that's about to fall on Ka'ash and do him dirty, I'm gonna have to take the same fate. Pause. Not do you dirty like that. Salakia. If they about to whoop up on Ka'ash, I got to take the same fate. I'm jumping in with my brother because he's family to me now.
Exactly.
We got the same beliefs. We got the same, warrior spirit. I got his back. I'm starting to see that in Wayne too. So I got your back too. Fab, I pray that, if you hear, something in here and it resonates with your spirit, maybe you can come in here, and learn this and maybe lift brothers out of the, the hoods, the ghettos, the barrios and the reservations, because they really would need a brother like you to do that. But Salaki, if I could, I'm gonna go ahead and get to what that means with the reef. And I did mention what was that called? Witch balls, which are like those ornaments. And at one point in time, you could look it up. So some of the stuff is going to be kind of hard for you to look up, but if you could find books that were written before the 1900s, you'll start to see certain things, because during a certain period of time, they sacrificed children.
Right.
During the days of Nimrod, during the Christmas time. It was called something completely different, but they would sacrifice children. And the Israelites talk about that in the Bible and tell us not to do that. And it's terrible to have to actually tell your own people, yo, don't sacrifice your children unto devils, unto other gods. And we think, why would we do that? But we spiritually, we kind of do that now with what we do. When we let our children join the LGBTQ and we let them, chop off their members and change their sexual orientation, we're sacrificing them to devils when we do things like that. Go ahead.
Has Christmas always fell on the same day, even in the Bible, or has the day like changed?
So December 25th is just synonymous with different gods' birthdays. So the Romans, I think it was the Romans, it was Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. They're saying he was born on December 25th. They're saying Nimrod was born on December 25th. But the celebration and what they would do for those holidays would be spread about 7 to 8 days with those pagans. The Romans would do Saturnalia, I think, for 7 days. And it would be from like the 17th on. So about to the 24th or 25th, depending on how it fell. So it would be around the same time with certain things, but other things would be for a time span of a week.
And that was, but around this December time is when Christmas or the
celebration of what they're doing.
Celebration of what they're doing. Because I don't know.
They're getting it. Yeah, they're getting it in.
They called it Christmas back then.
No, they called it Saturnalia. That's one of the names that I pulled out and stuck to teaching, because I don't want to say too many names during it.
Right.
Saturnalia, but there's other different names that they called it.
All right. But it's the same sort of type of celebration.
So if you hear people talking about they celebrated winter solstice,
right,
that would be the same thing as well, because they believed that the sun had power. That's why you have the Romans talking about the unconquered sun. Everything would die except for the evergreen tree. That's why that's a big tree during this holiday, because the evergreen tree doesn't die during the winter. So Nimrod was buried under it. They gave the tree gifts. The tree during winter, up until winter solstice, when the sun would come out, would stay alive. They worship these things. And you can see that they're dismayed at the signs of heaven, because during winter solstice, the sun is starting to be the shortest day. So they're worshiping this and trying to pray to a sun that can't speak back to them, and they're being dismayed by this and the signs of heaven with the stars and astrology and all this. And the Lord is telling us not to do that. Like I got into a little discussion online, and I had said something to the effect of, what was it? It was pretty much like astrology and tarot cards are fake. And there was brothers and sisters who took offense to that, because they believe that they can take a tarot card and they can decide their fate. But that's just the same thing as a false god. There's nothing about that can stop a bullet. There's nothing about that can tell you your future. That's a vain practice. Salaki, I'm gonna read that thing about the reef in one moment. All right, so this comes from an article that I read. You guys can look it up. It says Romans decorated their houses and outsides of buildings with wreaths and tree branches. They were often made from holly. So we do that now. We do the holly bush, the wreaths on Christmas. That's something that we do. And we be like, oh, it's just a part of the Christmas spirit. But really, you're just worshiping another god. It says Saturn's sacred plant. So they're saying, so Saturnalia, Saturn's sacred plant. Also the fir in honor of Phanes, Saturn's grandson, and ivy in honor of Ops, Saturn's wife. The green branches symbolize luck, friendship, and life during the chilly winter. So they're worshiping, life and luck. They want to stay alive, because during these months, these heathens, these Edomites, they were in a very cold place. That winter sun. Or excuse me, that winter time was the coldest month. They're dying there. A lot of them are dying during this time. They're burning trees. There's practices that they have where they're even eating people because they're running scarce on food and stuff. And then we start to adopt these holidays. We start to, you know, in the Bible, sacrifice our own children. So I just wanted to point that out about the wreath. So when you see somebody with a wreath, you know, just know where it come from. Now that you know this, I wouldn't hang a wreath in your house because the Lord knows you know about it now because I just told you. Go ahead.
That circle thing that
Right on your door. I remember my neighbor was like, she was like, "You got a problem with this wreath?" I was like, "Well, I don't really got a set issue with it, but the Lord has an issue with it. That's why I wouldn't put it on my door." She was like, "Well, does it offend you?" I'm like, "No, it doesn't offend me. Like over here, we serve the Lord. Over there, y'all can do what y'all want." All right, let me get back to it. Let me see. So if we can get Isaiah 30 and 9, because this is what we're going through now. We want to believe in Christ and God the way that we were taught, and we can't continue to do that. We believe in it the way that the pastor said. Oh, no matter how you come to Christ, this is what's going to happen. You're going to make it to heaven as long as you believe him. No matter how you do this, that, and the fourth. But the scriptures say something completely different. All right, yeah, let's get Isaiah 3 and 9, and I believe we'll read down to verse 11.
30 and 9, it's like it.
30 and 9.
This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 30 and verse 9. That this is a rebellious people, lying children that will not hear the law of the Lord.
So we don't want to hear things like, yo, do not celebrate Christmas. We don't want to hear things like, yo, don't eat the fat back. Don't eat, pig feet. Don't eat chitlins. We don't want to hear any of that. We don't want to hear from the Lord. We don't want to hear the law. Continue.
Verse 10, which say to the seers, see not, and to the prophets, prophesy not unto us right things.
Don't tell us the right thing to do. We don't want to hear that. Like when I tell some of these, friends of mine in the world, look, do not go out there sleeping with a whole bunch of women, turning them into whores, never to deal with them again. They're like, I ain't trying to hear all that.
Right.
I'm going to the Dominican Republic and I'm tearing fire to as many women as I can. But the Lord in these scriptures, which we can go about in a different time, talks about men of the Bible having multiple wives. Just don't let it turn into something where it turns your heart away from the Lord. Exactly. Now, can you have multiple marriage license in the United States? No. But the government can't dictate who you share a familiar relationship with when it comes to a man and a woman. So if a brother has 3 wives, that's his business. Because in the scriptures, it shows how the Lord gave David the wives of Saul after Saul died.
Exactly.
And if that was a wrong thing to do, then why would the Lord do it? Mm-hmm. But brothers would rather, instead of having multiple families and raising children and, being a protection to their wife, they would rather just, get a Brittany Renner. They would rather get a Superhead. They would rather get a Sexy Red.
Superhead.
They don't want, sometimes people don't want to hear right things. They just want to hear whatever it is that pleases their stomach and their genitalia. Continue.
Prophesy not to us right things. Speak unto us smooth things.
They want to hear things like, you could do whatever you want so long as you love the Lord. You could do whatever you want just as long as you believe Christ is king. Like the Lord is going to accept you the way you are. No, you have to change.
Exactly.
Continue.
Prophesy deceits.
People in their heart of hearts, sometimes they actually want to hear lies.
Yes.
Like you ever deal with somebody that don't want to hear the truth about themselves? You try to tell them something that would make their life better, and then they act like you've offended them. Like, yo, you can't do that. You messing yourself up. They rather hear you say, oh, nah, that's a dope thing to do. You should keep doing that craziness. Go ahead.
I literally just dealt with this. And Coach Fab could tell you. I'm sitting down with somebody, and I'm speaking. I forgot what we were speaking about, but I was speaking our truth.
Right.
And the girl, she's a Christian. She grew up Christian, and she was like, well, how do we even know that what happened in the Bible was real? I almost fell out.
Right.
I'm like, this what they teaching you? This is what you come in here and say?
So if I could, I would then ask, so how do you know anything?
But she
is
got
real?
up and she got up and made a scene as if I did something wrong. She was like, well, go ahead, then I don't want to talk to you no more. You being real hostile. I'm just sitting, all I did was look at my mans and was like, bro.
That's what they do.
I know she ain't just say that just now.
Right.
She's like, oh, I'm leaving. I'm like, wow. But
You-
nah, I just dealt with that. It's funny that you
Right.
say that.
And you just brought up a heavy point, because people will say that they have a relationship with God, but how? Just because you imagine one? That's like y'all remember on Martin when Pam thought she had a relationship with Denzel Washington? Kind of like she loved Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
That it's like you don't have a relationship with God. You don't actually know him because you don't know what's that. Matter of fact, we're gonna get that where it talks about whoever says they know him and keep not his commandments and is a liar and the truth is not in him. Is that not in the New Testament, or am I tripping?
It's not New Testament.
But people will literally say, and if you while you find that, I'm gonna finish that verse. Give me one moment.
Salakia, when you do finish it, can you let me know where we at so I can follow along?
Khan, I got you. And I'm going to start it from the top. This is Isaiah chapter 30 and verse 9, while Ka'ash gets the other verse. It says that this is a rebellious people. So we know that we get a little rebellious. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we are sheep, but we need guidance. So we're going to be out here doing everything. We'll be spinning the block on each other. We'll be out here talking about what color the parts of our body is and going to Pound Town if we don't have a leader. It says we're lying children. We'll cap about a lot of different stuff as a people and not get to the root of what actually needs to fix us. It says children that will not hear the law of God, or Salaki the Lord, which say to the seer, see not. Don't see what I'm doing. Don't tell me what I'm doing is wrong. I don't want you to tell me that. I've dealt with that too, with family members of mine. And to the prophets, prophesy not unto us right things. Don't tell us the right thing to do. We don't want to hear that. Speak unto us smooth things. Prophesy deceits. They would rather hear lies instead of the truth. It would be like if somebody has a disease and they only have a certain amount of time to live and they can live their life the right way. They would rather hear, nah, you're going to live forever. You're going to be good. Like, or somebody is doing something to where they're sleeping around with women not protecting themselves. You be like, yo, bro, you gotta slow down. You might want to strap up. Hey, yo, chill. They rather hear, YOLO, shoot. You only live once. You better get it while you can. It's only gonna be so long before you can't do that. They don't want to hear the truth. And Salaki Akash, if you're having trouble finding that, I'll see if I can find it. Give me one moment.
How'd you say it again?
Not saying that you know the Lord, but you don't. Salaki, give me 1 second. It is in 1 John 2 and 4.
I knew it.
No sweat. Yeah, no sweat. You got it. So we should do what we're supposed to do. Christmas, like I said, it's a very big holiday for everybody. It's the most fun time of the year, for a lot of different people, to the point where they'll have Christmas in July. But for me, it's nothing now. Every single part of joy that I had in celebrating that holiday, I can do celebrating the Lord's holidays. And we're going to break that down as well, because you can see things like this. This is what the Bible talks about actually doing. This right here. Some people call it a menorah. I believe in the Hebrew it's called menorah. This was described in the Bible, even in the New Testament with Christ. They told Moses was told exactly how to build it. This has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not 8, like a lot of other people will have, these other fake Jewish people. This is the real deal right here as far as the amount of candlesticks that it's supposed to have. And it was representation of the 7 churches. That is something around this time during winter that we should be dealing with, not a Christmas tree. This right here that we see, the shield of David that you can see on my jacket. This is not a Star of David. It's a shield. The D in the Hebrew, the Da that we would call a D, is shaped like a triangle. David's name in the Hebrew is Dawadah. So all these symbols that we deal with, the cross, this, that, and the fourth, the Christmas tree, talking about it relates to Christ, all these weird things that we like, we're putting babies with wings on it, saying it's angels, this, that, and the fourth. The scriptures never had no naked baby angels rolling around. We should stop dealing with that type of stuff. But let's go ahead and read that verse in the Bible.
This is 1 John chapter 2 and verse 4. He that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar.
How you say that you know who God is and you don't keep his commandments? I had no idea about this. You asked me if I knew God, I would have said, hell yes.
Right.
I know that if I say, God, forgive me before I die, I'm going to heaven. That's what I thought. I thought that if it was my last second, if I could get that, Lord, forgive me. All the sins I was committing, I thought if I can get that out. But read it again.
He that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him.
Let's get Matthew 7, 21 and 23.
Salakia, so what was that one? I'm writing my precepts.
Oh, no sweat. That was 1 John 2 and 4. So if you want to know God, keep his commandments. If you want to love God, keep his commandments. You start to know who God is through reading the Bible, but you begin to understand what you should do and really know who he is by keeping his commandments. And you'll know that by reading the Bible precept upon precept. Will you know and understand all of the Lord's ways? No, you won't. But you'll know him, and you won't be denied in front of Christ when it's judgment time. He won't say, I don't know you. Flee from me, thou who worketh in iniquity.
Right.
All right. So if I can get that in Matthew 7 and 21. And this is all in the New Testament. So for those who are new to hearing certain of these scriptures, ask your pastor and the preacher, why was I told that the law was done away with and I didn't really have to follow the commandments? Like, yeah, I'm not going to kill, I'm not going to steal, I'm gonna love God in my heart. But why is it saying if I love him, I'm gonna keep his commandments, and if I know him, I'm gonna keep his commandments?
That's a good question.
Because it's talking about all of the commandments.
Exactly.
It's talking about his laws, and we can keep all his laws. When and the part of the Bible when it says we're no longer under the law but under grace, that's talking about the punishments of the law. I got you 1 second. Because there was something that was called the Levitical priesthood. And these Levites, if you broke certain laws, would come to your house and they would unalive you.
Absolutely.
They would put you in the middle of everybody and they would throw stones until you were no longer breathing. Mm-hmm. We're no longer under that punishment. We're no longer under that part of the law. We're under grace, which is a grace period. It means we have time to get it together the right way. We can get it together before Christ comes back. And World War III is on the rise. We can get it together.
Right.
But we have to follow these laws, statutes, and commandments. We have to show God that we know who he is, and we have to know who he is by loving him, and that's following those commandments. Go ahead, Wayne.
Real quick. Christianity and Muslims and everything like that, those are religions. Correct?
Right.
But we Hebrew Israelite isn't a religion.
Right. So if I could, I got you. If I could. So even though people call us Hebrew Israelites, we would just be Israelites.
Right.
That is a term that we sometimes goes interchangeably. Hebrew is just the language that we speak. Israelites is our actual nation. Right. Like you have Chinese people, we're Israelites. We wouldn't actually be a crayon color. Also, you said is what our religion, Salakia?
I was saying, so being as though we're Hebrew Israelites or just Israelites,
right?
We're a nation. That's not a religion. My second part of my question would be Christianity and all of that. That's not, if I wouldn't be saying I'm a different nation to a Christian, correct? Because she could be an Israelite, which she is.
Right. Yeah. Christianity is a religion.
Yeah,
Israelite.
Not a nation.
Yeah. Israelite is an actual nation of people.
Right. Okay.
So Israelite people, they just follow other religions.
Okay,
just like Israelite, just when you hear Israelite, just know that is a black person, a Hispanic person, or a Native American person. We're all one nation. We're just from different tribes.
All right.
And there's a class that I'm gonna break down later in the future and it's going to be about the different things in archaeology that let us know that we're Israelites. Because a lot of the things that we say are not unfounded. It's and that's that when I used to hear these things from people, like this is some of the books that I'll go ahead and read to find out certain things that you would never know, certain truths you could find out, especially this one right here. This is a book right here that you can find out certain truths, and there will be certain unbiased opinions. Now, some stuff you might have to take it with a grain of salt, but some stuff actually, cosigns the Bible, which the Bible doesn't need it to cosign. But yeah, religion
is not a nation.
Is not a nation. So Muslims, matter of fact, I could break it down for you even further. Muslims, that's the Arabs' religion. Christianity, that is the Edomites' religion, or the colonizers' religion. That was just something that was pressed upon us. And what's funny is you have, big head Negroes that I think they know something by saying, well, that book, and this is what Officer Matazapai had brought out last night. That book was used to enslave us. Okay. What if a toaster was used to just use it the right way? Like what they used is not bad. What they did to us was bad. And they gave us a slave Bible anyway. They took out almost everything from the Old Testament and just showed like anything about the Old Testament, they pretty much took out. The Bible was written before the transatlantic slave trade. It was written before Edomites called themselves Americans, and before Christopher Columbus set sea.
That's before they took the Apocrypha out.
Before they took the Apocrypha out, when it was written on scrolls, the Bible was not used to enslave people.
And that one had the Apocrypha in it. I'm sorry, I'm not.
So the Bible was written over a certain period of time. I'm not even going to say 1,000 years, but it was written over a certain period of time. So if you go back to, if you go back to the time of Nehemiah, and that those verses are being scribed and written down. Let me see. If you go back to like Nehemiah is not going to have privy to like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because that time hadn't passed. But there's going to be certain things. You had a question?
No.
Oh, but the Bible was written over a certain period of time. But the way King James had those scholars translate the Bible, it had the Apocrypha in it. And then there was like countless other Bibles that had the Apocrypha in it. Protestants came and took certain things out. I'll read a verse from it that would make you know why they took it out. But Salakia, the verse that we were going to, if we could.
Matthew chapter 7 and verse 21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven.
So there's people that say they know God, but they don't follow his commandments. And they say Jesus's name 1,000 times. They'll say it while having a seizure in church and praise dancing and sweating and passing out. Continue.
But he that doeth the will of my Father, which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name?
Have we not said Jesus is going to get you a brand new car? Have we not said Jesus is going to bless you if you give me $1,000 right now?
Right.
Have we not said this, that, and the fourth on Jesus' name? Continue.
And in thy name have cast out devils.
Didn't you see Benny Hinn flipping a shawl around and making people pass out, knocking out a whole crowd of people, doing a helicopter? North Carolina. Didn't you see Benny Hinn doing that?
Right.
He did that. He was saying Jesus' name. Continue.
And in thy name done many wonderful works. And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you.
Christ is just like his Father.
Exactly.
He's going to say, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Just because you talk a big game does not actually mean that you are going to have success in getting into the kingdom of heaven and not getting turned away. You can literally do what you need to do and get there, or you cannot. You can literally talk about how you're going to do your homework or you could do it and then get a good grade. You could talk about fixing your car, or you could actually do it and be able to drive on the road. You can talk about a lot of things, but unless you actually do it, it's not coming to pass. And unless you do the work of the kingdom, you're not seeing the kingdom. All right, let's go back. Let me see. 1 second. All right, yeah, let me go back to Christmas. We're starting to run out of time. All right, so one of the things that I was mentioning earlier, and you know, the Christmas tree is a very big symbol, and it brings back a lot of childhood memories for us, but it's not a symbol that's rooted in Christ. It's not an actual symbol that's something good that we need to have in our households, just like the wreath, just like the ornament, just like the cross. But there are certain things that are in the Bible that we can have in our homes. There are certain things in the Bible that we can, you know, reverence with some sense of dignity and respect, and know that the Lord, you know, does not have a problem with it, because on earth as it is in heaven. Right. Because this existed in heaven before it did on earth. So that verse is not, when it says, you know, on earth as it is in heaven, that's just not a figure of speech, because the kingdom of heaven is going to be run down here like it is up there. Because if you go to Revelations, it's saying the kingdom of heaven is going to be on earth. This is something that was given in I believe, a vision to Moses, and we're going to read about it and know why it's on the table, because every single thing that we do is according to scripture. We're not going to make up something of our own. We're not going to be out here, you know, fooling the people and having them following some, you know, vain practice that the Lord doesn't want us following, and just making stuff up by the seat of our pants. So if we can get Exodus 25 and 31, and we'll read through that. And again, this is as people call a menorah or a menorah. This is something that I looked at when I was younger as something obscure. I thought it was funny. Like, I used to hear things like about a dreidel. Dreidel don't got nothing to do with us, but this does. This is something that was stolen from us back during the Roman captivity, and during when the Romans came through Jerusalem. And I'm gonna show you a picture about it in the book, because that's one thing the devil does. The devil writes down and puts in history things that they do. It's just recently that they're trying to hide it, because now we're in books. We're seeing all the disgusting stuff that's happened to us. Here's another example of that. This is something that's called the delectable Negro. Something else I have to break down. During slavery, there's a lot of things that happened to us that they don't talk about. What was the brother's name who led that revolt in that movie? He think he got the answer. Young man think he got the answer. That's hilarious. What's the I cannot remember the brother's name. I believe he was Haitian. You know exactly who I'm talking about. He led that revolt, and he unalived a lot of the oppressor.
I know who you're talking about. Kind of.
I feel as if I do too, but I don't know the movie.
I can't remember what's his name. I cannot remember his name. It was called but anyway, once they caught, go ahead.
It's Toussaint Louverture. I don't know how to say. It's like
no. It's a different person then.
Somebody else.
It's somebody else. There's more than one brother that led a revolution, but they actually made a movie about it. And once the brother had started making movies about it, you really don't see his movies anymore, because they really went ham on him.
Was it Birth of a Nation?
Birth of a Nation. What's the character from
Nat
that?
Turner.
Nat Turner. I thought he wasn't Haitian.
Nah, he wasn't.
Salakia. But when they caught Nat Turner, I believe in this book, they go into some descriptive stuff about what they did to that man. And they don't want you to know what they did. And I'm going to put it like this. There's parts in that book that talk about, and we're talking about history, erasing a history, but we can tell in history who we are and what was taken from us and what was important by looking into things like this. Even though the Bible tells us, if you're not as spiritual as some brothers are, You can look into secular history and see what's going on, and the Bible has been telling us for years. But they were eating black people.
Right.
They were like this book talks about the things that they were doing. They weren't only, sexually assaulting us, but they were eating us. And they made Nat Turner eat his own genitalia.
Oh, for real?
And then said that he wanted to do it.
That's crazy.
Absolutely. But let's read about this this menorah before I go too much off topic.
This is the book of Exodus, chapter 25 and verse 31. And thou shalt make a candlestick of pure gold, and beaten work shall the candlestick be made. His shaft and his branches, his boughs, his knops, and his flowers shall be the same.
So they're describing this kind of like a tree. And I've already told you what it's about, so we don't even have to build up to it. They're saying it's like the flowers, the boughs, the knobs, the branches. This is almost like a tree that's coming out. It's almost like a tree. Continue.
And 6 branches shall come out of the sides of it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
3 branches of the candlestick out of the one side, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side. 3 bowls made like unto almonds, with a knot and a flower in one branch, and 3 bowls made like almonds in the other branch, with a knot and a flower. So in the 6 branches that come out of the candlestick.
So if I could, so this is the candlestick right here, and it has 3 branches on one side, 3 branches on the other. That's a menorah. Let's go ahead, or menorah. Let's go ahead and move over to, if I could, Revelations 1 and 13, because that's the Old Testament. That's back in Exodus. And for time's sake, I'm not going to go and go into exactly how they fashioned it, whatever they did to get it the way it was supposed to be. But it looks something like this, but it was in pure gold. It was no other. He said pure gold, no other metal. Continue.
You said Revelations
1 and 13.
Revelation chapter 1 and verse 13. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man.
So this is talking about in the midst of the candlestick. So he sees a menorah. John the Revelator. I'll just call him John. John is seeing in a vision in the midst of the 7 candlesticks. So it's even being talked about then. Continue.
Clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girded about the paps with the golden girdle. His head and his hairs.
That's Tawab right there. I just wanted to go into that. And let me see if I could do one thing. Let me see. If I can find, let me see. Let me see the verse. All right, so this was just talking about the tabernacle, the first verse that we read. Now I want to go to another verse, and we'll begin to wrap it up, because don't celebrate Christmas. Don't put a Christmas tree in your house. You can put this in your house. This is something that we had.
Right.
And this, I'm going to read. There's a small little part about it, and I'll flash it for the camera. And you'll see it in the book is shaped like this. This is called the Encyclopedia of the Ancient Roman Empire. And Jerusalem, the Israelites, were looted and defeated by the Romans. This says the looting of Jerusalem. After the capture of the city, Roman troops plundered the riches of the Second Temple and exhibited them in the triumphal procession that took place in Rome. In this detail, the relief of the Ark of Titus, the most important symbol of the subjugated people, is clearly seen. The menorah, or 7-branch candelabrum. So let me show you what they actually stole from us. If I can put it up to the camera. Is that clear to be seen?
Time.
So you can see it literally looks like the one that we have on the table, and look how large it was. This is one that was in the Second Temple. So it's possible that it could have been a one that was just fashioned after the original. Who knows if it was the original based off the history that I've read, but this is something that they stole from us. And it's okay for us to take back our culture. Let me let me read something for y'all that the Most High had to say about this in Joel. Let me see. Because this was important to us. Let me see. Joel. All right. So this is Joel chapter 3, and I'm going to start at verse 4. As a matter of fact, I'll start at verse 5. It says, because ye have taken my silver and my gold. What was that menorah made out of, or that menorah made out of?
Silver and gold. Those were the symbols I believe I seen it say. On the left side was silver on the branches. I believe on one side was gold on the branches.
Well, it said make out of pure gold, but there was still silver and gold that we had in our temples. And this is saying that these heathens took and stole things out of the temples. This talks about it in the Bible in Joel, and this even talks about it in secular history, what the heathen actually did to us. Let me continue to read. It says, and have carried away into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians. The Grecians, this is talking about Tyre and Zidon in the verse before. This is talking about African tribes that sold the Israelites to the so-called white man.
Right.
Who did that happen to? That happened to us. So when it says the Grecians are what people will call Greeks today. We were sold to the Greeks. Our things were stolen. This is ours. It's not anybody else's. That's what the Lord told us to make. Let me see if I'm going to stop there. Give me 1 second. All right. So let's get Exodus 32, 4 through 7. And I'll go ahead and read that for y'all. I'll give y'all a second to get there. So this is where we're going to go ahead and end it. We were talking about going into Christmas, the holiday, what it means. Even January 1st is based after a God. Like every single thing we come across is based after a God.
Salakia, sir. Exodus, what was that?
Exodus 32, chapter 4. And if you're able to read it for me, I'll greatly appreciate it.
Sir.
The water.
32, chapter 4.
Yes. Verse 4.
Verse 4.
Yes.
All right, sir. And he received them at their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool, after he had made it a molten calf. And they said, these be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt.
So this is talking about when the Israelites were literally delivered out of Egypt. Moses had left and went up to the mount. They got so restless, they didn't know if he was coming back. They decided to make their own gods, the children of Israel. We're going to skip down to verse 6.
Exodus 32, verse 6. And they rose up early, on the morrow, and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play.
So they rose up to play. Remember that verse. This is something Ka'ash had brought out last week on Wednesday. Rose to play. Because people will try to say, oh, this is not something we got to worry about. They're pretty much having a feast to other gods.
Yep.
Saturnalia is a feast to another god. It's to Nimrod. That's what it is. We eat, we rise to play, we do gift giving, just like they did. If you can get those pictures so I can show them what we're celebrating and what the Christmas time actually comes from and how we're celebrating our demise, that's something I wanted to go into as well. But they rose to play. And it said, verse 7 says, and the Lord said unto Moses, go get thee down, for thy people which thou broughtest out of Egypt have corrupted themselves. The Lord said they corrupted themselves when they did that. They are separating themselves from the Lord. I'm going to go ahead and get 1 Corinthians 10:7, because this brings it home. Because when you put that tree in your house, you're being an idolater. Because the tree, the golden calf, it's the same thing as far as, worshiping another god. Some people don't see it that way. That's fine. Some people say it doesn't matter. The New Testament says it does. The Old Testament says it does. I don't know where if you believe in the Bible, where are we going with this? You feel me? Where are we going if we can't believe in anything? So the picture that you see on the screen is the version of Santa Claus before it was introduced into the United States. This is something in other European countries that they had. His name was Santa Claus. And Santa Claus did not have elves, he had slaves. He didn't have a sleigh, he had a steamboat. So what does that remind you of? That reminds you of the transatlantic slave trade.
Right.
The transatlantic slave trade started in 1492. When you're celebrating Christmas, not only are you giving reverence to another god, but you're also celebrating your demise. That's what you're also doing. You're celebrating your demise, because I'm going to read in a book that talks about what happened with the suppressor after they got us to go into slavery. And they knew they were going to be able to put us in slavery after a stronghold fell that was with black people. Can we get one more picture? And I'm going to go ahead and read this. And then we'll get to that verse that talks about and rose to play.
It bothers me. I'm sorry, Salakia. Sorry if I'm allowed.
Oh, no sweat. Go ahead, sir.
It bothers me that all of these figures of even the Easter Bunny just be he got the fur of an Edomite. All of these figures.
Yeah, that's funny.
Just Edomites.
Can you see him? Can you see Santa Claus with all his slaves? So the United States actually changed this practice. His name was Santa Claus, not Santa Claus, over in I forgot, it's like Sweden. And black people over there still got to go through this, because the Edomites over there, they walk through the street in blackface, and it pisses black people off over there. This man used to come across in a steamboat and throw candy for the kids, do all this stuff, and have Zwarte Piet, which was a slave. And then they would say, well, it's not racist. He's not black. He came down the chimney, and that's why his face has soot on it. And then they would say, well, why don't his clothes have soot? Because it's rooted in slavery. That's what it is. So this is a book called The Borgias. And you're going to see why they celebrate like this. This gives a little bit of intel on why they celebrate with us going into slavery, and how it relates to their Christmas traditions. Because there wasn't a time, this doesn't come from something that was like back in the Babylonian times during Nimrod. This doesn't come, with the Romans, but they added this. A lot of stuff we see is added. The Christmas tree was there before. Santa Claus is something new. They said, let's give Santa Claus, instead of a slave ship, let's give him a sleigh, and let's give him elves instead of slaves. So this book is called The Borgias. Caesar Borgia is the person who you guys know the picture of Christ is about. He had an ancestry relationship with his sister. He was also a murderer. He was a disgusting human being, and they made him the picture of Christ. I think it was Leonardo da Vinci, or one of the famous painters, is who was commissioned by him, the Pope, to paint the picture. So when you see the figure of Christ that's white, that's this family is who that comes from. All right, so this is the Borgias, page 82. It says, then in the first 6 months of 1492, so Christopher Columbus set sail. The transatlantic slave trade is about to start, because they come in and they're crushing everything. It says there was a sudden fitful blaze of lights illuminating the almost universal darkness. This is kind of speaking about all this, like all the greatness that came into defeating us, because not only did Christopher Columbus go to the Americas, but he also went to Portugal, Spain, and France, because there were black people over there ruling. You can look it up. It's called the Moors. We ruled for 1,000 years. We were visiting the Native Americans because those were our brothers, and they've even found Moors coins. This isn't something in a storybook. You can actually look it up. It says on January 2nd, Granada, the last stronghold of the Moors. It's telling you that this was the stronghold of the Moors, black people. In Spain, fell to the army of the Catholic kings. So they fell. So you see how he looks like the Pope, Santa Claus?
Right.
This is giving reverence to the Pope because the Pope commissioned this. This is like giving reverence to the Pope. Santa Claus is pretty much a representation of the Pope who defeated black people in 1492. It says, Ferdinand and Isabella, the good news conceded with the Roman carnival, and Romans put all their pagan vitality into rejoicing. So when there's a Roman, let me see, is there any more? So when it's talking about all their pagan vitality, when it's talking about paganism, it's talking about what they actually celebrate. So they celebrate the Christmas tree. They celebrate wreaths. They celebrate ornaments, witch balls. They celebrate Christmas, Santernilla. And this is what they added. We ended up as slaves. They ended up as the rulers of the world. We shouldn't celebrate that. Santa Claus is a slave driver in a sense. And there's a lot of different things that we don't know what it means. It's almost like if somebody did something like killed somebody in a neighborhood because it was their quote unquote op, made a holiday about it and partied, and then the person that was unalive, now their grandchildren are celebrating it because they don't know the meaning of what actually happened. They don't know their great grandfather was murdered, and now they're celebrating it. And they're even holding up symbols that mean that exact thing. They don't know about it. We didn't know this. This is something that none of us knew. We starting to find out. All right, let me see if I got anything else before we wrap up. All right, yeah, I did want to go to 1 Corinthians 10 and 18. Let me see. Because in Exodus, that speaks about rising up to play. 1 Corinthians speaks about that as well. So I'll go ahead and read that. So this is in Dawada. So 1 Corinthians 10, 18 and 20.
Come on, sir. Ready? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 18. Behold, Israel, after the flesh.
So when it's talking about after the flesh, that's talking about
after the world.
Yeah, no, after us. Like, behold, Israel after the flesh, like us,
The
like
people of Israel.
Yes, exactly. Continue.
Sometimes, sorry, Salakia. How come? So of the flesh. Oh, this says after the flesh, not of the flesh.
Well, after the flesh, like what the flesh actually is.
Because sometimes when you hear of the flesh, they're talking about of the world.
Right. But in this sense, behold Israel after the flesh. You know, Paul wouldn't be saying, behold after the world.
The real children of Israel.
Yeah, he's talking about
saying.
us.
Israel by birth. Israel by genetics.
Right.
Okay, understood, sir. Behold, Israel after the flesh. Are not they which eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar.
So if you are going to eat after those sacrifices, if you're going to celebrate in Christmas, if you are going to, put up that Christmas tree, are you not a partaker of that? Are you not actually celebrating that other God? Continue.
What say I then? That the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything?
Like, is it actually anything? Is it actually anything real? Like, no, but you're still a partaker in serving another God, even though it's not real, even though it's not something that is actually a power. It's still something that we shouldn't be doing because it is a false God. Continue.
Awesome. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils.
So in certain cases, Gentiles is talking about Israelites. In this case, it's talking about heathens. Nimrod, when they were sacrificing and celebrating him, they were sacrificing children. And then we started doing that too, but continue.
And not to God. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils.
So check me out. We read how we did that in Egypt, or excuse me, after we came out of Egypt and rose up to play. Was that the verse that I wanted? Let me see. Salaki, I may have skipped over, but it's Tawab. It still made my point. If we can go to 1 Corinthians 10:7.
Con.
Because that's the actual verse that I wanted to read, but what you read was perfect. And then I'll read Exodus 32:4-7 right with it.
This is 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 7. Neither be ye idolaters, as were some of them, as it was written. The people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play.
So when it say as it is written, remember how I was saying that that's a precept, or that like when it says as it is written, he's getting it from a different part of the Bible. I'll go ahead and read that one more time, because he's saying the people rose up to play. He's saying don't be idolaters. So don't be partakers in these other gods. Don't put the tree in your house. Don't put the reefs on there. That's for another god. Don't do like they did when they did the molten calf. So let me get this in Exodus 32:7 for time's sake, or 32:6. It says, and they rose up early on the morrow and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. So when he is speaking about these verses, that's what he's speaking about. If I can get one more, it is in 1 Corinthians 10:21. And then we'll go ahead and end it there.
Con. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 21. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils.
So you can't drink from the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Like you can't say that you're serving the Lord and serve Satan at the same time.
Right.
If you celebrate Christmas, you're not worshiping the Lord. So you can't drink the cup of the Lord. You can't be up in here and then think you can celebrate Christmas. Continue.
You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils.
That's perfect. That says it right there. And that's in the New Testament for those, who might be confused on whether or not it matters when we're doing what we're doing in this time period. So, brief recap. Christmas is going against the Bible. We talked about that. What was that? Jeremiah 10:2, right. About cutting the tree out. We talked about what those origins of Christmas actually come from. We spoke about how we should serve the Lord, know the Lord, and love him, because this is the law class. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass the class over to Priest and Officer Kaash. Clap it up.
All right. This is the ISUPK security announcements. The rules for new brothers and sisters. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to learn and share themselves of the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, they are to seek counsel from the heads. Tithe, which is a commandment. Malachi 3:8-10, and Numbers 18-21. It means Ma'ashra means a tenth in Hebrew. 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you. Priest fund is a free will offering for the priest, not mandatory. Whatever amount you would like to give. The upcoming holy convocations, which is the Feast of Purim, which is February 22nd and February 23rd. If any brother wants to be a trooper in the school, he can start wearing black boots, pants, shirt, headband, and scarf. And with that, men of Israel, you say Abijam, which means to stand. Men of Israel, Amazon Shabbat, Amazon, Barak,
Yahweh Hashem, Yahshua Barakatham.
Yazmatah, hands down, Sar, turn and face the sisters. Sisters, Amazon, men of Israel, Amashim Shabbat, Amashim, Barak, Shalom,
Yahweh Shamar, Hashem Yahshai.
With that, class dismissed. Let's do that last part again.